I want to go back to the story I talked about at the top of the program now, and that is how Bettina Arndt was given an Australia Day honour recognising a lifetime's achievement, and for her trouble because she doesn't suit the left, feminist, man-hating zeitgeist, she has been abused mercilessly. I caught up with her earlier today. Bettina Arndt, thanks for joining us. I know you were on Outsiders yesterday, but I wanted to follow up with you because of the incredible criticism that's come your way. First up, congratulations on the award. I can remember when you were out there as a vocal and leading advocate for women's sexual liberation. Now you're defending the rights of men more often. It's been a long journey.
It's been a long journey, and back in the early days, I was promoting gender equity. I was promoting the idea of, you know, women having equal rights with men, equal opportunities with men, and that's just what I'm doing now, trying to promote a level playing field. But of course now we're up against a lot of areas where men are discriminated against, men are not getting fair treatment. So it's just another side of the same coin in my view.
What about the criticism, though? I spoke to you a week or so ago. You knew there'd be some blowback, but has it astounded you that there are people being so vitriolic in their criticism of you, starting up a petition to have you stripped of your award?
I mean, it has been extraordinary. Yesterday, Twitter was just going bananas over me, and incredibly derogatory stuff resurfacing. They're searching back through my nearly 50-year media career, trying to find things to take out of context and to paint me in the worst possible light, and digging them all out and so on. I mean, it's very interesting for me, showing how determined the feminists are to control the narrative and to stop and to silence anybody who challenges their way of thinking about the world. And I'm a real danger to them. So I see it as a real compliment.
Do you ever get upset by it, intimidated by it, scared by it? Because the abuse on Twitter, as you say, is absolutely horrific, but you also go onto university campuses to protest against the way that universities are looking to adjudicate on sexual assaults rather than leave them in the hands of police, and challenge some of the information. And, of course, you confront very physical, very direct protests there. Do you ever hesitate?
Oh, look, the campus work has been pretty hair-raising, on and off, and particularly at Sydney University. I mean, I suppose it's rare that I actually confront some of these venomous people. I mean, the students don't really bother me. They're not well informed about. They don't even know why they're there half the time. You know, the protesters. But I mean, for instance, yesterday I had a long interview with a journalist for New Matilda, who admits that they're doing a hit job on me. They've been preparing for 2 years, and they're trying to malign me by saying I'm misrepresenting my qualifications. And I had this hour-long conversation with this guy, and he went round and round and round trying to catch me out, and it was so obvious and so pathetic. And then it turned out that there's one agitator, there's one activist who has been long associated with end rape on campus, and she has been mounting this determined battle to try to damage my reputation in every way possible. And it turns out she's involved with writing this article too, and I would have never agreed to give the interview if I'd known that at the beginning. So, well, I mean, that really threw me, because people will the way they will cheat and distort and to do everything they possible to discredit you is a bit disturbing.
Well, let's have a look at some of the criticism. You haven't been afraid to take on pretty challenging subjects and defend very controversial figures. You've argued against the case made against Cardinal George Pell. And I just want to go to this video that was raised with you on television, commercial television, earlier today. It relates to your sympathetic interview, if you like, with a bloke who was convicted in his 50s of having sexual relations with a student. He was a teacher, she was a student, she was only 15. Have a look.
He's a man who made mistakes, served his time in prison. A man, I believe, should be allowed to get on with his life.
Oh, I lost everything. I lost my home. I'd been married for 37 years. I lost my marriage. I lost my children. I lost my job. I lost my status in the community. lost absolutely everything.
Here we have an example where evidence of the girl's sexually provocative behaviour was presented to the judge. The question that remains for me is whether there's any room in this conversation for talking to young people, particularly young girls, about behaving sensibly and not exploiting their seductive power to ruin the lives of men.
So, Bettina, was this a case, one of these cases where you got it wrong, or is it right to be focusing on some of these issues?
Oh, I think I was absolutely right to get involved in that, in discussing that case. The reason I got involved was a judge in Hobart spoke out against vigilante justice. This is a former teacher who had sex with a pupil and rightly went to jail and served his sentence. And he was then being targeted by this activist group who was, not allowing him to leave his home without screeching at him and just forced the university to stop him studying. And the judge said, that's not how we run our justice system. I got involved, did an interview with him about it, which has been shown again and again. Tiny segments of that interview which failed to point out that I talked to this man and said, you have done something very wrong, you rightly went to prison for it. All the aspects of that interview where I was making it very clear how seriously I regard that are never shown, and they only show... Look, I probably, in retrospect, should have been more careful with my tone, because I went on to talk about other broader issues, such as the fact that male teachers are very much at risk from allegations from sexually provocative girls. I mean, it's very difficult. And I've done interviews with teachers before about how do they deal with that. I shouldn't have included that in this interview with Bester, and I admit that now, and I've acknowledged that. I've got all the information about this particular issue on my website, and also the information about the activists who are trying to bring me down by using that. So and I'd like people to go to the source.
Yeah, you're very brave, and these are issues that are worth raising, and generally speaking, men can't raise them. You seem to be a lone voice in this regard. I recall an issue that I interviewed you about once before with that Canberra-based man who was actually sent to prison based on the false rape allegations of his fiancée. Now, that was all proved in court in the end, but it was only you who brought a spotlight onto this issue to show that sometimes, yes, sometimes it doesn't mean always, or it doesn't mean it's even very common, but sometimes women can make false allegations.
Absolutely. And that also sometimes women can be perpetrators of domestic violence. That's the other one they're very much using in their campaign against me at the moment. They rolled out Rosie Batty yesterday, who gave, I think, an extraordinary interview, saying she was sickened by my award. And I think that's, that discredits this woman who I once thought was really admirable, but she's now just a feminist puppet who says anything that the feminists want her to. She claims that, I'm damaging victims of domestic violence. And of course, I've always acknowledged what a horrendous crime this is, whether it's a male or female perpetrator. We have to take it seriously. But a third of the victims are male. Why won't Rosie Batty talk about them?
I admire your conviction. I admire your courage, Bettina Arndt, and congratulations again on that award.
Thank you, Chris.